Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. We made a video talking about Rick Rude going into the WWE Hall of Fame this year at Wrestlemania 33. He is the rumored guy that's going to be going in. That rumor was broke this week. The long-time sort of rumor that has been going around for a while is Diamond Dallas Page. I know that neither one of these guys is like a big main eventer, and I think a lot of people are hanging their hats thinking this year we're going to get Daniel Bryan, which I think is going to be a lock, and maybe Kurt Angle is another guy that I think a lot of people are thinking is going to be coming soon. I would hope that Kurt Angle would be the video game guy next year, and that would sort of pressure Vince to be putting Kurt Angle into the Hall of Fame next year at 34. But I have no control over what's going down. If you can remember back to when they thought about expanding the network and giving those 4 different tiers, maybe there's people out there that would want to pay the $14.99 and get the Hall of Fame vote, whatever that's worth to you. But Diamond Dallas Page going into the Hall of Fame, honestly, in my mind, is a long time overdue. WrestleMania 30 was anchored by Jake the Snake Roberts and Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, going into the Hall of Fame. Those guys at the time were DDP projects, where basically they went through and used and abused their bodies, and when their wrestling career was over, hit a point of depression where DDP used his sort of self-help technique with built around DDP yoga and just trying to influence them with positivity into their lives. I think everybody has seen the Jake the Snake Roberts documentary, whether you've picked it up yourself on DVD. I believe it was on Netflix for a time, if it's not still on there. And then I'm sure people have seen the Scott Hall story, the WWE DVD, when they did a documentary, and there's a portion in there about Scott Hall getting picked up by DDP and fixing them. And I'm not saying that DDP needs to go into the Hall of Fame just for his efforts of helping wrestlers. I've heard that Vader is going to sort of do this sort of rehab. I don't think that Vader's on drugs and alcohol the way that Hall and Roberts were on, but I think that DDP is going to try and change Vader's life, because there's word out there that he has less than a year or 2 years to live, and it's a lot of bad shit going down in Vader's life, and hopefully DDP can turn that around and try to find some positivity in there for him. But DDP, honestly, in my mind, is a guy that got into wrestling too late. He was in the bar business. He always liked professional wrestling. He always followed it. He wanted to get into wrestling as a manager. Once he broke in and did that, he sort of went to the end of his managing career. And I believe it was Dusty Rhodes that got him to start training at the WCW power plant and get into the ring and start wrestling. And when you think about it, DDP, his career started off kind of slow when he started wrestling. He did have the feud with Eddie Guerrero over the I think it was called the King of the Ring, where it actually was a physical ring, was the championship that they would wear. I remember that feud going around back in the day. But to me, honestly, what really put Diamond Dallas Page on the map is that because of his friendships with Scott Hall, because of his friendships with Razor Ramon, it was almost like they were paying him back. Diamond Dallas Page really was the first guy to get any shots in on the NWO. Lex Luger beat him for the championship on Nitro, but of course, then it turns around that Luger would lose the championship just days later at the pay-per-view. No one was ever able to really get on top of the NWO and stay on top of the NWO. They might have been able to beat down DDP here or there along the way, but he was that one guy that would almost always, crawl out from the ruins and find a way to get on top. He was the guy who just wouldn't quit and went from sort of a, not obscure, but, a real mid-carder to pushing himself to the top of being a main eventer. And it was because of Hall, because of Nash, and the NWO that really, put him up there as being one of the main guys in the company. DDP, to me, he won a lot of titles in WCW, and he was there during that era where basically the title was changing, it seemed like every month, sometimes every week. On Nitro, it felt like, and there was no real there was no real, sort of esteem, or there was no real satisfaction to being the WCW champion. I think a few of his reigns came after David Arquette. He was the guy who lost the title to David Arquette. But it is what it is. No, he wasn't, because Arquette pinned Bischoff. And whoever Bischoff was teaming with in that, Jarrett, I think is what it was. Whatever. It is what it is. Bad days of WCW. It's better that we don't drag it up. But, the one thing that honestly to me, I respect about DDP more than anything is that, when all the things went down with the invasion, DDP was one of the main guys. I think he was one of the first guys to debut. He got the Undertaker stalking Sarah gimmick, and that gimmick was the shits. There's no other way to put it. That was a bad gimmick. That was a bad way to bring him in. It didn't really make any sense to where that fit into the invasion, that he was coming over from WCW. But at the same time, he really liked Sarah, so he wanted to follow her around and stalk her and things like that. But when he took off that motorcycle helmet in the middle of that ring and exposed himself as being the guy, the place went bananas. The place wanted to cheer the guy, but they had to boo the guy because he was going up against The Undertaker, who was a WWF guy at the time. But in order to do that, DDP, who had a contract with WCW, had to take the buyout, where basically he had to take pennies on the dollar to get out of his contract, when other guys just flat out, like Nash, Hall, Hulk Hogan, Scott Steiner, there was a lot of guys that had offers to come to WWF, but it said, hey, WCW is out of business. There's no work for us to go to, but we have a contract that's guaranteed. We're going to get this money if we just stay at home and don't do anything. And that's what a lot of guys did. But DDP looked, basically at Father Time and said, hey, I don't have a lot of time left in wrestling. And going to WWF was always his dream. He always wanted to have a match with The Rock. And if he was going to wrestle at Wrestlemania, if he was going to accomplish some of his goals that he had left, he had to take the offer, and he had to go now. So he basically took less money to go work for Vince than he would have made if he would have just sat at home and did nothing. So as bad as you think the stalker gimmick is, just remember that angle, in order to run that cost DDP money. But when he got to Wrestlemania and had that match against Christian, I think that was the Wrestlemania in Toronto, I think that was worth it to him. I think, honestly, for everything that he had to give up, he still was making a lot of money at the time. And his gimmick at that time, honestly, wasn't that much better than the stalker, with the self-help sort of gimmick with the big smile, trying to help Christian get that win. When he beat him and he won the European Championship, it might as well have been the WWE title to him. And I know after his days were done, he hurt his back and he had to, give up his dream of wrestling in WWF. He went to go wrestle for TNA. He was there for a little while. He didn't really make the the pendulum swing at all. He just was there, wrestled a couple matches, and then he left from there. And then from there, he's launched DDP Yoga, where I'm sure he's made more money than he ever did in his days of professional wrestling. DDP's a great guy. DDP was a great wrestler. DDP wrestled in the era of WCW that people don't like to remember. But I think that just because this guy's such a great guy, and basically nobody out there really has anything bad to say about DDP. Even Scott Steiner, he doesn't talk bad about DDP. He only talks bad about Kimberly, and they're not together anymore. So hey, it is what it is. But I don't know, man. DDP going to the Hall of Fame makes me feel good. I don't think he's going to be the main eventer. Like I said, people are hoping for Daniel Bryan. People are hoping for Kurt Angle. But, just to fill out the card, DDP going in sort of solidifies the story of Razor Ramon and Jake the Snake Roberts going in. So I was really surprised that he didn't go in at 31 and or 32. But 33 is just good enough. So we'll see what goes on, and we'll cross our fingers. Maybe he'll get the announcement on Monday. Peace out, everybody.